Good evening, friends. Come on in, grab a seat. Don't worry about being late. We're just getting started. Look around this hall. It's the same old place we've been using since the war ended, with the chalk dust and the wooden benches that creak when you shift. Outside, the palm trees are swaying under those California stars, and people are driving home in their new cars with those fancy tail fins. But tonight, let's forget the headlines about rockets and transistors for a minute. Let's talk about something right in front of your eyes, something you see every single day without thinking twice. Color. You know, I was walking across campus the other day, and the sunset was putting on quite a show, orange and pink bleeding into the blue. A student stopped me and asked, "Why does the sky turn those colors?" I told him we'd get to that, but first, let's start even simpler. What is color, really? Not the fancy word we use for a tie or a flower, but what's happening when you look at anything and say, that's red or that's green. It all begins with light. Light comes from the sun, or a lamp, or even the hot filament in those new television tubes everyone's talking about. That light hits things, your hand, the wall, a leaf, and some of it bounces back into your eyes. Your eyes catch it, your brain makes sense of it, and poof, you see color. But here's the first surprise: the object itself doesn't have color baked into it like paint on a wall. The color is in the light that reaches you and in how your eye and brain handle it. Let's look at the eye first, because that's where the action starts. Imagine the eye as a little camera. Light comes in through the clear front part, the cornea, and gets bent, just like light bends when it goes from air into water. Then it passes through the lens, which is flexible and can change shape so you can focus on a book up close or the moon far away. The image lands on the back wall, the retina. That's where the magic happens. The retina has these special cells, rods and cones. Rods are for seeing in dim light. They're sensitive, but they don't tell you about color. That's why at night everything looks gray. Cones are for bright light and color. We've got three kinds of cones, roughly speaking. One kind likes red light best, another green, and the third blue. They're not perfect, they overlap a bit, but together they cover the rainbow. Think about mixing lights. If I shine a red light and a green light on the same spot, what do you see? Yellow. Not muddy brown like mixing paints, but bright yellow. Add some blue and you get white. That's how your television works. Three beams of red, green, and blue lights mixing on the screen to make every color you see. It's additive mixing. Your eye does the same thing. The three cone types send signals and your brain adds them up. If mostly red cones fire, you see red. If red and green fire about equally, yellow. If all three fire the same, white. But why do some things look colored and others don't? Take a red apple. Sunlight hits it. White light, full of all colors. The apple soaks up most of the blue and green light, but throws back the red. So red light bounces into your eye. Your red cones get excited and you say red apple. A green leaf does the opposite. It grabs red and blue, sends green back. Grass looks green because chlorophyll in the leaves prefers to absorb red and blue photons, reflecting green ones. Now photons, what are they? Light isn't just a smooth wave like ripples on a pond. Back in the early days, people argued about it. Newton thought light was particles, others said wave. Maxwell showed it's an electromagnetic wave, electric and magnetic fields wiggling together, traveling at that famous speed, 6,000 miles a second. The wavelength, the distance between one wiggle and the next, decides the color. Long waves around 700 billionths of a meter look red. Shorter ones about half that look blue or violet. But then quantum ideas came along around the turn of the century. Planck and Einstein showed light comes in packets, tiny bullets of energy called photons. Each photon has energy tied to how fast it wiggles. E equals h times frequency, where h is Planck's constant, a tiny number. Higher frequency means more energy per photon. So blue photons pack more punch than red ones. Light behaves like waves sometimes and particles others. Shine light through two slits onto a screen, and you get interference stripes, bright and dark bands, even if you send one photon at a time. Each photon goes through both slits, interferes with itself. Nature adds up possibilities like waves, even though the photon hits the screen as a single spot. This wave particle thing explains everyday colors too. Why is the sky blue? Sunlight comes straight through the air, but air molecules are tiny, much smaller than light's wavelength. When light hits them, the electric field makes the electrons wiggle, and they re-radiate light in all directions. That's scattering. Blue light scatters more because its shorter wavelength makes the electrons respond stronger. The scattering goes like 1 over wavelength to the 4th power. Blue scatters about 10 times more than red, so sunlight heads toward you, but blue parts get knocked sideways from all over the sky. You look up, see blue coming from everywhere. At sunset the light travels through more air, most blue scatters away, leaving red and orange to reach you directly. Why aren't violet skies common, even though violet scatters even more? Our cones aren't as sensitive to violet, and sunlight has less violet to start with, plus some violet gets absorbed higher up, but mostly it's our eyes. We see blue stronger in that mix. Now let's talk about shiny things, like a soap bubble, or oil on a puddle. Those colors shift and swirl iridescent. That's not from pigments absorbing certain colors, it's interference. Light reflects off the front surface and the back surface of the thin film. The two reflected waves travel different distances. Depending on the thickness, they can add up constructive interference or cancel destructive. For certain thicknesses, blue cancels, red adds, or vice versa. As the film thins or thickens slightly, colors change. Nature's doing wave addition right there. Take a piece of glass. You see your face in a window, but also through it. Some light reflects, some goes through. Why 4% or so reflects from each surface? In the quantum view, a photon has a chance to bounce or keep going. But to understand why it depends on thickness for thin films, we need something deeper. Imagine a photon heading to a glass plate. It can bounce off the front or go in, bounce off the back, come out. But in quantum electrodynamics, the full theory of light and matter, the photon doesn't take just one path, it explores all possible paths. We add little arrows for each path, arrows whose length is like probability contribution, direction like timing or fate. Most arrows cancel, the survivors tell what happens. For a thick piece of glass, many paths, arrows point everywhere, net almost zero weird effects. But for thin glass, only a few main paths matter. Front bounce, back bounce. The back path takes longer, light slower in glass, so its arrow turns more. Depending on thickness and color frequency, arrows point same way, lots of reflection or opposite cancellation, more transmission. That's why soap bubbles show colors different wavelengths get reinforced or killed differently. This arrow adding is like summing in calculus, an integral over paths, but we don't need the heavy math tonight. Just know nature computes by adding amplitudes, not classical certainty. It's why single photons build interference patterns over time. Your eye catches these photons. Each cone pigment absorbs certain wavelengths better. The signals mix in the retina. It's like a mini brain back there, with cells connecting rods and cones before signals head to the optic nerve. The brain compares areas. A patch that looks gray next to bright white might look blue in contrast. Illusions happen because of this comparing. Think of a tie in sunlight. The fabric threads scatter light. Blue threads reflect blue more, but weave them with red and green, and your eye mixes them. Up close you see specks, from afar a new color. In the atomic age we're living through, we know atoms too. Electrons and atoms sit in energy level. A photon with just the right energy kicks an electron up. Later it falls, spitting a photon. That's fluorescence, or why some paints glow under black light. In pigments, specific jumps match visible photons, absorb some, reflect other. Grass is green because chlorophyll's electrons absorb red and blue, not green. Sky blue because air molecules scatter blue best. Your shirt bright because dyes grab unwanted colors, throw back the one you want. But the deepest thing, color isn't in the object. It's a conversation between photons, electrons, and your biology. Photons carry energy packets, electrons dance with them. Your cones translate, brain paints the picture. Change any part, different eyes like a bee sees ultraviolet or different light, and the world looks different. Next time you see a rainbow after rain, or the green flash at sunset, or just your friend's sweater, remember it's not simple. It's light wiggling, photons choosing paths, electrons jiggling, eyes mixing, brain interpreting, and it's beautiful because of all that hidden machinery. We'll go deeper in the next part, into those arrows and why nature adds them up that way. But for now, look around. Everything's glowing with this quantum story. Thank you. Any questions before we break? Alright friends, let's pick up where we left off. Last time we talked about how color sneaks into our eyes, light bouncing around, photons zipping in packets, electrons and atoms grabbing some colors and tossing others back. We saw rainbows from scattering, soap bubbles from thin films playing tricks with waves. But now let's go deep. Let's ask the real question. Why does any of this happen the way it does? Why doesn't light just go straight through or bounce like a billiard ball? The answer takes us into the strange heart of things, into quantum electrodynamics, the full story of how light and matter talk to each other. Back in the 40s and 50s, when we were figuring out transistors and building those big cyclotrons, we needed a better way to describe this talk. Classical waves explained a lot, but not the particle side. Particles explained energy packets, but not the interference strike. The theory that ties it all together says something wild. When a photon goes from here to there, it doesn't pick one path, it sort of tries every possible path at once. Then nature adds up little arrows, one for each path, and the final arrow tells the probability of what we see. Picture this. Imagine a photon starting at a light bulb and heading toward a piece of glass. We want to know the chance it reflects back or goes through. In the old picture, it hits the front and bounces with 4% chance or keeps going. But that's too simple. The glass has thickness. Light slows down inside, about 2/3 speed in ordinary glass. So paths through it take longer. To figure the real probability, draw a little arrow for each way the photon could go. Think of a stopwatch hand that spins as the photon travels. The hand turns at a rate depending on the color, faster for blue, higher frequency, slower for red. Each path gets an arrow length, stays about the same, shrinks a tiny bit for absorption, but direction depends on how long the path took, the total time. For a thick piece of glass, there are zillions of paths. Bounce off front, bounce off back once, bounce back and forth many times. All those arrows point in random directions. They cancel each other out. Net arrow almost zero for weird effect. But for thin glass, like a soap film or oil slick, only a couple main paths matter: direct bounce off front or go in, bounce off back, come out. The front bounce path has a special rule. We flip the arrow around, point opposite. That's just how nature does reflection, from less dense to denser. We accept it as a rule. The back bounce path takes extra time inside the glass, so its arrow turns extra. Depending on thickness and color, the two arrows might point the same way, add up, strong reflection, or opposite, cancel, weak reflection, or even none. As the film drains and thins, colors shift. Peacock feathers, those shiny beetles, same thing. Tiny layers or ridges, spaced just right for wavelengths, make arrows add for one color, cancel for others. Structural color, no pigment needed. This arrow adding is like calculus in disguise, an integral summing over every path. In advanced math, we integrate little contributions over all possibilities. Here nature does the sum automatically. Most paths cancel, survivors cluster around the classical path, the one least time, like Snell's law for bending at surfaces. That's why light seems to follow simple rules in everyday life. But zoom in, and it's exploring everything. Now let's bring electrons into the dance. Color in objects comes from electrons in atoms or molecules. Electrons sit in energy steps, like rungs on a ladder. A photon with exact energy matching a jump kicks the electron up. Later the electron falls back, spitting a photon, maybe same color, maybe different if it drops in step. In pigments, those dyes in paints or leaves, the jumps match visible light energies. Chlorophyll grabs red and blue photons, high and medium energy jumps, lets green slip by. That's why plants look green. In blood, hemoglobin grabs blue-green, reflects red, hence red blood. In the atomic age, with all the new materials we were making in labs, we learned to tune these jumps for bright colors in plastics or fabrics. But reflection itself, a photon hits an atom's electron cloud. The electric field wiggles the electron wiggles back, radiating a new photon. That's scattering. In metals, free electrons respond fast, strong re-radiation, mirror shine. In dielectrics like glass, weaker response, partial reflection. The photon knows the thickness, because paths differ in time, arrows turn differently. No spooky action, just adding amplitudes. Your eye catches the result. Photons hit cone pigments, 3 types, red sensitive, green, blue. Each absorbs better in its absorbed photon triggers a chemical change. Pigment bleaches a bit. That starts an electrical signal. Cones connect in the retina. Some cells add signals from nearby cones, others subtract. For contrast, the retina does early thinking, spots edges, detects motion, compares color. Signals travel optic nerve to brain. Brain mixes the 3 channels into perceived color. But perception isn't raw, context matters. A gray patch beside bright red looks greenish. Stare at red, then white looks cyan. Brown, just low intensity yellow or orange in context. No pure brown photon, it's dim white with surroundings telling brain brown. Illusions show this. Project red light on white, cast shadow. Shadow looks blue, because brain subtracts expected red. Optical tricks exploit cone overlaps and brain comparison. In the 60s and 70s, with color TV everywhere,
and people watching moon landings in living color. We appreciated this more. Cameras mimic eyes. 3 phosphors for red, green, blue. But eyes adapt. Walk from sunlight to dim room. Colors shift as cones adjust. The quantum part. Single photons trigger vision. Sometimes experiments show eye detects a few quanta, but brain needs many for color. Each cone responds probabilistically. Quantum uncertainty and absorption. So color emerges from this chain. Photons explore all paths, interfere via arrows, interact with electrons' quantum levels, hit cones, mix in retina, interpret in brain. Nothing has color alone. A red apple in green light looks black. Wrong photons arrive. Under ultraviolet bees see patterns we miss. The world looks solid and colored, because quantum cancellations make classical behavior dominate, but peek underneath. Its probabilities, paths everywhere, cancellations galore. Nature computes by summing amplitudes across the universe. Next time you watch sunlight sparkle on water, or see a friend's tie change in different lights, think of those arrows spinning, adding up. The universe doesn't just throw light around, it weighs every possibility, lets most cancel, and hands us the survivors as reality. That's the strange, beautiful truth. Physics doesn't ruin wonder, it deepens it. We see more, not less, knowing the hidden machinery. Thank you. Question.